In the past, as human population increased and the need for adequate food became a necessity, man introduced what is known as the Green Revolution, a system of large-scale industrialized farming that produced high-yielding varieties of food grains. The new varieties, however, require large amounts of chemical fertilizers and pesticides to produce high yields. This appeared to be successful in the short term, but the potential ill effects of their long-term use have been raising concerns about their potentially harmful environmental effects. In Old Testament times, as noted in the book The Ministry of Healing, in Israel, every family had a home on the land with sufficient ground for tilling. Thus were provided both the means and the incentive for a useful, industrious, and self-supporting life. And no devising of men has ever improved upon that plan. To the world's departure from it is owing, to a large degree, the poverty and wretchedness that exist today. And if we go back further in the Old Testament to the book of Genesis, the book of origins, we will see that God placed Adam in a garden to dress it and keep it. So in giving the plan to Israel, God was only re-establishing with his people the original model. But the way we do agriculture today doesn't seem to add up to this biblical model.
News: 2 pesticides regularly used as weed killers on the Central Coast are actually posing quite a health risk.
Is finally going to ban some hazardous pesticides.
Ban on a certain kind of pesticide that is sometimes used on the foods we eat. The EPA making the ruling, saying it could be harmful to children.
The more pesticide you apply, the more you need to apply. It's almost like a junkie. You get addicted to it, no? The more you take, the more the less effective it becomes, and the more you need.
In ancient times, every family had a home on a piece of land sufficient for their tilling. That was very important for their sustenance. Not only that, but the land was distributed fairly among the people based on the number of people in your family. And if a man was to barter away his landed property, in the year of Jubilee, the 50th year, all landed property was redeemed. What a wonderful plan. It really shows me how God placed a serious interest in agriculture and land. Landed property, agriculture, is a part of God's great plan to safeguard humanity against the extremes of wealth and the extremes of want. It is God's plan to keep man well nourished as he uses agroecological methods or organic methods to farm. It helps to keep man physically fit as he labors in the field and gets that well-needed exercise. It helps to keep man spiritually grounded as he works with nature he learns of the God of nature, the creator, right? And so this is a part of God's plan to keep man in the right state of mind and health. But we've become so urbanized, so far from the land, so far from agriculture. So we have to settle with what we get. But that's not the only problem. This so-called Green Revolution and the industrialized system of farming was supposed to be the solution to the growing crisis of food security. But has it really succeeded?
The thing you're not allowed to think the Green Revolution is some magical chemical intervention that succeeded in feeding the world, because we've never reached that stage on the past 200 years for sure.
Conducted by multiple international food security programs, including UNICEF and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, saying between 702 million to 828 million people were affected by hunger in 2021. That's an increase of more than 150 million people from 2 years ago.
The UN's latest report on global hunger shows we're moving backwards. At least 828 million people went hungry one way or another on a daily basis last year. War, natural disasters and rising temperatures are threatening food security.
But what is meant by food security? According to the 1996 World Food Summit, food security refers to when all people, at all times, have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. In an article published in The Atlantic in 2014, it was noted that we already produce enough grain to feed the world. So the question begs, why then do we still have 828 million people who are hungry? This may suggest two things. Number one, the Green Revolution, with its industrialized farming systems, have not solved the problem, the growing problem of world hunger. Number two, there is not a direct relationship between food production, the amount we produce, and food security, access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. Which then means that there are obviously other reasons, which I presume is number one, the poor does not have access to land, as noted by the World Bank Group. One reason pointed out for this is that unscrupulous investors are exploiting smallholder farmers, herders, and others who lack the power to stand up for their rights. Another reason why there's a growing problem with food security is because the poor don't have access to income. But when you look at it carefully, if the poor had access to land and are willing to get down into the dirt, they could have access to income because they could sell what they produce. Have we departed from the original model? But that's not all. The issues just keep climbing and climbing. In 2019, the United Nations Decade of Family Farming 2019 to 2028 Global Action Plan indicates, and I quote, "Family farming refers to all types of family-based production models in agriculture, fishery forestry, pastoral and aquaculture, and include peasants, indigenous peoples, traditional communities, fishery folks, mountain farmers, forest users, and pastoralists." End quote. And, given that definition, over the past couple of years, the figure calculated by civil society organizations and researchers indicate that about 70% of the world is fed by small-scale farmers and other peasants. But in 2021, the FAO referred to smallholder farmers to farm sizes under 2 hectares, which brought about a new data indicating that smallhold farmers feed 30% of the world. This, of course, sparked a fresh debate and outcry from groups such as the ETC group and other civil society organizations. Now, whether or not this long-standing debate about who feeds the world will ever end, I leave to them to decide. But is quantity over quality a matter for consideration? In our next video, we'll be looking at organic farming methods that we could implement as we continue to think about food security and the original model. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And please don't forget to support, as your support will help us to continue to create content for your education.